On April 25, 2012, Deborah Parker, then vice chairwoman of the Tulalip tribes, spoke at a Senate press conference to support the renewal of the Violence Against Women Act, which for the first time sought to include Native American women. Parker bravely shared her story about how she was raped as a toddler by a man who was never convicted. She recounted, "I was the size of an approximately 2.5 feet couch cushion, which is where he raped me." 6 years later, Native American women remain profoundly vulnerable, as the Violence Against Women Act, also known as the VAWA, does not allow tribal courts with the authority over crimes committed between two strangers. #MeToo has helped bring sexual assault into the spotlight. However, Native Americans are largely left out of this conversation, despite having the highest rates of sexual assault in the country, largely due to a lack of awareness and the persistent marginalization of Native American peoples. As a result, the Justice Department reports that 1 in 3 Native American women have experienced rape or attempted rape. All women have the right to be free and safe from sexual violence. And unfortunately, stories like Parker's are far too common. No universally accepted term is embraced by all Indigenous peoples in the U.S. And in order to best respect and represent the diversity of this population, a variety of terms will be used throughout this speech according to their most appropriate context. So today, we will examine the egregious causes to sexual violence against Native American women, then turn to understand its devastating effects, before finally laying out some solutions. To see why, as NPR reports on November 7, 2017, that for Native Americans facing sexual violence, justice just feels out of reach. Sexual violence remains pervasive in Indian country due to a lack of appropriations and jurisdictional issues. The federal government is obligated by the U.S. Constitution to provide adequate funding that meets the basic needs of Native Americans, including public safety. Leading us to our first cause, lack of appropriations. The Bureau of Indian Affairs is chronically underfunded, resulting in a lack of law enforcement on tribal lands. As the Office on Violence Against Women 2017 Tribal Consultation Report explains, in some areas, a victim must travel by boat or plane to receive a sexual assault forensics exam. Sexual violence is profoundly traumatizing, and by not having resources readily available, this forces victims to do the last thing they need: go directly from assault to exam via a road trip, or accept the alternative: no justice. Insufficient funds make it especially difficult for tribes to adopt the VAWA. As NPR reports, on June 25, 2015, adopting the act involves hiring more attorneys, judges, and paying for more prison beds. With steadily declining budgets, tribes are discouraged by these high costs. And as of January 2018, only 16 tribes have adopted it. This means 557 tribes, 97% of all tribes in America, still cannot prosecute non-Indians for sexual violence. Much of the confusion revolving around the Indian justice system boils down to today's second cause: jurisdiction. As Amnesty International discusses in their landmark 2007 report, Maze of Injustice, the complex relationship between federal, state, and tribal jurisdiction deplete tribal authority. Essentially, understanding who is accountable to what crime under whose jurisdiction requires answering a series of questions, such as whether the victim and/or accused is a member of a federally recognized tribe, and whether the offense occurred on tribal lands. The answers to these questions are often so unclear that no one intervenes, denying justice to survivors of sexual violence. Further, critical laws such as the VAWA and the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010 complicate this relationship. As Kathleen Redling-Schaefer explains in her November 9, 2017 article published in the Notre Dame Law Review, limitations in both acts restrict tribal court authority. She notes that only recidivists can be considered, And as federal courts have generally failed to try a large number of offenders accused on tribal land, this grant of authority is a facade, permitting most aggressors to go unprosecuted. Tribal advocate Kimberly Norris Guerrero described reservations to the Washington Post on February 8, 2014, as a hunting ground for white, non-native men to rape, abuse, and even murder Native women. As the VAWA only protects Indians who know they're aggressors, predators know they can proceed unpunished, exacerbating two principal effects: the continued marginalization of Native American women and the perpetuation of rape culture. First, the continued marginalization of Native American women. According to a December 20th, 2018 report by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, Native American women are 4 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than the national average. Systematic underfunding and the unnecessary convoluting of jurisdiction persistently obstructs justice from victims of sexual violence. The previously cited tribal consultation report reveals a 2016 audit of just 19 Alaskan police departments found nearly 4,000 unprocessed rape kits. By failing to provide adequate funds, the federal government is essentially telling Native American women, "We're sorry, your rape's just too expensive." Carolina Tono, the Tohono O'odham Nation, told NBC Left Field on January 8, 2018, that her suicide attempt started around age 8. She thought, if I'm just going to be around people raping or molesting me, I just want to leave. As her second effect demonstrates, sexual violence is life-threatening. Centuries of aggressors going free has perpetuated rape culture within Native American communities. As Adam Hardy and Kathleen Brown-Rice point out in a 2016 issue of the Professional Counselor Journal, once a Native American woman living on tribal lands is exposed to sexual violence, the likelihood of her becoming a victim again is as high as 80%. To stop this vicious cycle of sexual violence, we can look to solutions on both the governmental and personal level. First, at the governmental level, Congress must increase appropriations to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and amend the VAWA to allow for the prosecution of strangers and relaxing restrictions on grants of authority. To provide victim assistance, the Indian justice system should dedicate fines from sexual violence crimes committed on tribal lands to a designated victims fund established at the Office on Violence Against Women. To strengthen tribal courts, Redling Schaefer outlines a deferential standard of review in examining tribal court decisions. In this, federal courts would be able to protect individuals against any possible unfair treatment while still not interfering with tribal sovereignty. By passing a law instating this system, Congress can begin to return the powers of the Indian justice system back to where they belong, inside tribal courts. However, given today's political climate, we must consider some personal solutions. Because of my experience working in a congressional office, I know the impact calls make. Today I have call scripts with me that detail the steps Congress and the Indian justice system must take to protect Native American women. Please, let your voices be heard by taking a script with you after the round and urging your local officials to take action. Additionally, I have buttons and pamphlets with suggested social media posts that detail that to help spread awareness. Place these buttons on your personal items and use the hashtag 1in3 to start a conversation with your community about this sexual violence epidemic. Because essentially, if we don't start talking now, Native American women will continue to fall victim to this incessant cycle of sexual violence. When Parker bravely shared her story, she announced that she, like many others, is a Native American statistic, a survivor of sexual violence. Her question then, and has always been, why is my life and the life of so many other Native American women less important? Today we have examined the causes, effects, and solutions to sexual violence against Native American women. No one should have to endure the pain and suffering that Deborah, Caroline, and hundreds of thousands of Native American women have had to endure. Together, we must stop this cycle of sexual violence, because justice should not stop at reservation lines.